Everybody's ready? Okay. So we have really been excited about this. Really excited. I think, Bob, it was maybe a year ago, I think I said to you, you should come and we should have you speak sometime, and nothing materialized with that. And I think maybe we said it again. And probably 2 or 3 months ago, maybe, we actually set a date. Was it a couple of months ago? And the date was Palm Sunday. What a great date to have you here. And I've been excited about it. And I remember thinking about what that meeting could be like, thinking about what Palm Sunday would be like, how you start to get excited before Easter, at least the church world does and Christian people do. And then all of a sudden, this coronavirus changes everything, changes the dynamic of what our meetings were going to look like, the kinds of things we would do in the meetings. But it didn't change us being excited about you coming and sharing. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to everybody hearing what you have to say. So why don't you just jump right in and share with us what you've got for us.
And I feel like I'm in the middle of two masters here, so thank you for inviting me here. I appreciate that. And for those of you that are watching online, understand that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the curve in terms of relationships here. So I get to test what I say in real time right away, okay? The big point that I wanted to start with is that when we start looking at familiar texts, like today we're going to look at Jesus coming into Jerusalem, what we call Palm Sunday, that the text's meanings change according to the context, and none of us would ever expect that we're reading this particular event with the background of what we've all had to deal with in the course of the last couple months. So I'm going to read the narrative, and then I'm going to basically make a premise, and that is that the history that we're in gives us ability to see something that we would otherwise not see. Now, I'll unpack that a bit as we go. But if you're following along, I'm looking at Luke chapter 19, verses 28 to 40, which is the very familiar text. And Luke starts this way. Jesus, when he had said this, and we'll talk about what he had said in a little bit, he went on ahead up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethpage and Bethany in the hill called Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples, saying, "Go to the village ahead of you. As you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you why you are untying it, tell him the Lord needs it." Those who were sent ahead found just as he had told them. And when they had untied the colt, his owners asked him, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." They brought it to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on the colt and put Jesus on it. And when he went along, and the people spread their cloaks on the road, when he came to the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began to joyfully praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and he wept over it. And he said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but is now hidden from your eyes." Okay, here's my big point, and then we'll unpack it a bit, okay? I'm suggesting that Luke helps us understand what Jesus is doing as he comes, as the King comes near. That's my big deal, the King comes near. And he does this by giving 2 events before and then the event we just read as lenses to help us understand what's going on. I'm going to say what they are now, and then I'll unpack and you'll understand what's going on. The first lens is that the King comes near against the backdrop of the hardness of the ruling class. Luke does this in an amazing way. He uses Zacchaeus as an exception, but he illustrates by negative what the ruling class is all about. Okay. Second, he gives us the lens to see Jesus coming near against the backdrop of the heaviness of the religious elites of his time. Okay. And thirdly, he gives us the Jesus coming near in Palm Sunday against the hopes of the righteous few. This is going to be the most interesting one, so hang on a bit, okay? And last, he helps us understand the coming of Jesus against the fourth lens, and that is the heartache of Jesus himself. Okay, how do we understand this? Well, first of all, the first lens I'm suggesting is the hardness of the ruling class. I'm not going to read it, but you've probably read it. It's the story of Zacchaeus. When I was growing up in Sunday school, we sang the little chorus, Zacchaeus was a wee little man. You remember this story.
Wee little man was he.
He climbed up into a sycamore tree for the Lord. You know how this works, okay? For those of you that don't have the problem of that background, you can just dismiss everything. But the contextual lens is that Jesus comes to Zacchaeus, who's a tax collector, and he's a wealthy guy, but he's short. So he goes ahead, climbs up the dumb tree, and when Jesus comes to the place, he says, Zacchaeus, come on down, for I'm going to your house today, as the chorus goes. Now, what are the lessons that he wants us to learn from this? Well, first of all, Zacchaeus' response illustrates by exception what the ruling elites are all about. Jesus comes into the Jerusalem at a time of the occupation of the Roman authorities. Okay? Jerusalem is under the siege, not under like the siege we're under. They can't do what they want to do.
Right.
Okay. So Jesus comes to Zacchaeus, and when he tells Zacchaeus that he's come near, he does three things that I think are instructive. The first is that people matter more than position. He says, I got to stay at your house today, Zacchaeus. And in spite of Zacchaeus' position within the community and up in the tree, he says, Zacchaeus, I want to be with you. And that people matter more than position. Now, I want to tell you something, Joe. You've helped me in this because I'm not one of these guys. I'm letting you know that I don't think you mess around too much with you. People are your fair game for anybody. Whereas I'm much more of an introvert, and I'm someone who's more worried about what other people think about me than not. Okay? So what's fascinating to me is that Jesus wants them to understand that people matter more than whatever their job is, whatever their place is. It doesn't even matter if they're a tax collector. And you can imagine all the people that time are going, he's going to be with a tax collector. Be sort of like being part of a IRA terrorist group or something like that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. The second point here is that Jesus' presence matters more than my possessions. Immediately, Zacchaeus gets down and he says, if I've defrauded anybody, I'm giving half of my stuff away. Understand that there's always an economic implication to Jesus coming near. I'm getting to some application down the run, but here's the big point. When Jesus comes near, the values of economics get turned on their head. Okay? So Jesus' presence challenges my view of my stuff. Okay? Third lesson before we look on. Purpose matters more than power. When Jesus comes near, his purpose is to save lost folk, not to establish his own position. Because it says at the end, the Son of Man has come to seek to save what was lost. Great lesson, a verse that I memorized when I was 6 years old or something like that, okay? Now, let me give you an illustration, then I'm going to ask you some apply questions. It's been a bunch of years ago. My wife and I just got married, and we were asked to host a veteran missionary couple. Well, this is the first time we'd ever taken our china out of their thing, and we were all nervous as all get out. And we had a hard time sequencing the cooking of the roast beef and the mashed potatoes all come out hot at the same time, whatever. But these veteran people didn't care about that. And they put us at ease. And we had a wonderful day, a wonderful night before going off to speak to the university meeting at the University of Rhode Island. My point being is that when Jesus comes near, it changes my priorities, it changes my purpose, and it changes the way I look at my stuff. Okay? Now, here's the application question. Where have you seen the effects of Jesus coming near in your life or in the lives of other people? You probably have lots of stories. I'll give you one. Go, one each. Come on.
Well, I could think of some stories, in the recent past, but I'm thinking right now when you were speaking there about Jesus coming near and the whole challenging of our economics and the whole challenging of our stuff. Aren't we all now? Maybe we all aren't. I don't want to speak for everybody. I don't want to speak for all Christian people. I certainly don't want to speak for non-Christian people. But it seems like that understanding of the effect on my possessions, the way that you said that. How did you say that exactly? There was a phrase that I wish I would have remembered it exactly. How he challenges our possessions, challenges
Our view of stuff, view of our possessions. Yep.
our view of our possessions. I think we're in that right now. I think that Jesus is shining a light on that. You said when Jesus comes around.
Yeah.
So for me, in the midst of this, I see it as a Jesus coming around. In fact, we were speaking a few minutes ago about what is this coronavirus revealing? So I see Jesus revealing to me the importance of things or the unimportance of things. I think you were saying something similar, weren't you, Steve, to that?
I was, and as we think about our stuff, I've been thinking a lot lately about how I view my time as my stuff. And this coronavirus situation hasn't really changed my life that much as far as my requirements. It's freed up some of my time, which I need to realize isn't really my time, it's his time. And where I used to get upset when there were demands on my time that I wasn't expecting, unexpected events come up, there's a need, not a good mindset for a pastor, because we don't have time. So, one of the verses that always jumps out at me when I read it is Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and he says, "You strain out a gnat, but you swallow a camel." And he's talking about the things they allow that are just totally inappropriate in God's kingdom and God's economy. And the weightier matters in God's eyes about how we deal with people and how we love people, they pay no mind to it. And Zacchaeus is a classic example. Jesus constantly said, the problem is you do these religious things. You appear to be religious, but your hearts are far from me. It was the problem in Isaiah. It was the problem in Jeremiah. It was the problem when Jesus came, and it's the problem now. It's the appearance of godliness, but denying the power thereof and not establishing the fruit thereof.
Now you've made the segue into the second lens. I'm so glad. Pay you the big bucks to do this, Steve. I would really appreciate that.
Doubling my pay today.
The first lens, obviously, we said before, is that Jesus comes against the hardness of the ruling establishment. He's coming to occupy territory, okay? So when he comes in as the king coming near, understand that there's a whole kingdom out there that people can see that they have to deal with, okay? The second lens is what I would call the heaviness of the religious elite, and they have an inability to see what's really going on. As Jesus wanders into Jerusalem on this donkey, which we'll look about a little bit later, the fact is they don't even see what's happening because their hearts are in the wrong place. Now, Jesus illustrates this by telling a story. We're not going to read the story today, but it's a story within a story. And the story basically says that this person who's a ruler has gone off to be proclaimed king, and he's given some minas. And if you look up, there's all sorts of debate as how much a mina is. 10 people get 1 mina each, okay? And a mina could be, most people think it's between 4 and 6 months' wages. That's a significant amount of money. You can do the math yourself, because I'm not a math guy. So what's happening? And he says, put it to work. He goes off to be declared king, and then he's going to come back and do his thing. The problem is there's a whole connection of religious people who don't want to see him become king. So there's 2 audiences here. There's the audience of the foes, the people who are against Jesus. And as he comes into Jerusalem this Holy Week, everyone knows what's coming on. We know what's going to happen at Good Friday. We know what's going to happen at Easter. And those foes are out to get Jesus. Okay? And then there's the faithful people. They're the folk and Jesus is going into Jerusalem on this donkey on Palm Sunday in order to provide treasure for his disciples to put into use while he goes back and then come back. It's really a fascinating parable, okay? And then, of course, there's this one person. He's the fearful guy. And he says, you had those money, but you're a hard guy. I didn't know you were going to do what you're going to do. I buried it. And Jesus says, no way. I gave it to you to invest. Okay? So Jesus' story is meant to prepare the servants to get ready to receive gifts. The gifts he's going to give will come as a result of his death. Okay? He's told Peter earlier, they're the keys to the kingdom.
That's right.
Okay? When he comes into Jerusalem, he's like the person coming to provide treasure down the run in this next week so that they will invest it for kingdom purposes. I can't get too excited about that, okay? And the real question is, he's ultimately going to hold accountable those people who are against him. Okay? That's kind of the eschatological imperative, if you want to get all excited about that. But the real question becomes, how do I view the resources given to my use? What sort of economic values affect the way I invest what's been given to my stewardship? That's the point of the story. Will I be like the religious elite that are just heavy and blind and don't care, or depressed and discouraged, or even fearful? Or will I see that as a result of Jesus coming near, he's given me stuff that you can't put a value on? In which case, this period of our life is open season to talk to people who otherwise were so filled with all the other stuff of life, all their sitcoms or whatever. After a while, you can only watch so many Netflix movies, they get boring. Now the question is, what are you going to do? What do you got for me? And the neighbors I'm talking to want to know, what's the meaning behind the madness of this time? So my question's to you. What examples have you received that reflect these responses? Does that make sense to what I'm asking you? Say, go for it, Joe.
It does, except you had talked about, how did you say it? The hardness of the
religious elite.
The hardness of the religious elite. And so maybe my response to it is a little bit different because
you're a religious elite.
I am. I am. And I have to address that. And again, this virus and my last year or two have revealed that, because I've been in ministry for 40 years, various kinds of ministry. I started with concert promotion, and now I'm pastoring. And John Piper wrote a book called Brothers We're Not Professionals, and I never read the book because the cover of the book, my reaction to it was, no, I think I am. And so I have found myself, I think, in the company of the religious elites. And as I'm trying to wind up my ministry and trying to finish well, my prayer has been, God, I would just like to be a Christian. I'd just like to be a Christian person. That's how I started. How did I become this? And I wonder myself, I used to be very hard on these religious elites until I realized that maybe I have become part of their company. And if I have, I'm sure other people as well. Not everybody has to be in ministry to become that. And I guess maybe my challenge to myself and to all of us is, how much of that have we become with what he's given to us, with the stewardship, the minor, the 1, the 10, however he's given it to us? What have we done with it? And I would think that becoming a religious professional as such is almost like hiding it in a way.
Well, let me break in just a bit and then tell you, my story, okay? I want to make a distinction between expectation and expectancy. I think we are called in this time to give up our expectations of what we want God to do. But yet we are not supposed to give up our expectancy about what God might do. The problem is when God doesn't do what we want him to do, it's easy to turn God off and miss the expectant thing. Now, here's my personal story. 5, 6 years ago, my son Keith died. He was at Air Force Dock, got cancer and died. And one of the things I complained about early on, the first part of the grief process, God, you didn't meet my expectation. We prayed for him to get healed, and he didn't. Well, ultimately he healed, got into heaven. But what I had to get over was the fact that grief can be kind of selfish. And I had to ultimately say, I want to be someone who expects to see you work without putting strings on how that's going to happen. In that way, we get to invest the minas of the treasure that the King has given us in ways that lead us in all sorts of crazy possibilities. You're going to do that on Easter Sunday, I understand, at Ocean Beach or something like that, right?
We're hoping to do it at Ocean Beach. There still might be something that prevents us, is what Ocean Beach has told us. But yes, we plan on being in the parking lot.
Who would have thunk it? Who
I
would have
know.
thunk it?
Yeah,
Who would have thunk
we
it?
wouldn't have thought it.
Now, time's going quick, so I got to quick end up, because otherwise you're going to kill me, you see how this works. Now, the third lens, and this gets more to this idea of expectation, expectancy. You see, Jesus tells the disciples to go get the donkey, and they can't wait. Oh, this is going to be the big day. The donkey's going to come into Jerusalem. They put their coats on. The king's going to make his appearance, right? They're all hot to trot, ready. This is finally what we had pinned our hopes on, okay? In spite of all of Jesus' warnings, their life's going to be tough, that he's going to have to die. They're excited, and they even take the Old Testament Psalms. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, okay? They're ready. And the lens is the hopes that are false of the righteous few. And that's where I put myself. Oftentimes, I want God to do what I think God ought to do.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I, somewhere along the line, have to realize that the most heartbreaking news of Palm Sunday going in is that Good Friday's coming. And sometimes we rush to Easter without realizing the horror of Holy Week.
That's right.
Now, guys, we're in the midst of another kind of horror here. I don't want to get in the way of what Jesus wants to do, but I want to dictate to him what he's supposed to do.
That's right.
So as the king comes near, let's let the king be the king. And this brings me to our fourth lens, in which I'll quit, okay? As Jesus comes near, he sees Jerusalem, and he does the most unexpected thing. He weeps. He cries. And I'll let you know, guys, and those of you that are watching, Jesus isn't rejoicing over what's happening in our country right now or our world.
That's right.
He's weeping. When the king comes near, he cries. Because he's a king who's concerned. He's a king who ultimately died for us all. So I've got four lenses for Palm Sunday to help me see through what's going to happen this Holy Week. One, will I be apathetic to Jesus coming near and experience the hardness of heart of the ruling elite? Okay. Will I be antagonistic to the fact that he's coming back and going to put everything right? Or am I going to invest wisely? Will I have false hopes of glory without suffering? Because I think we're going to go through a rough go the course of the next months or so. Or will I embrace the heartache of Jesus and weep with him over the difficulties that we face? Now, all this is pretty heavy stuff. Let me conclude with an illustration. Then
I know it is heavy. I thought we were going to get a nice theological, and you made it very personal to us.
I did, right. So let me give you an illustration to close, and then you can close however you want. Maybe you have some other ideas, but you see, my time's almost up, and I'm a school teacher, and that's how this works, okay? Growing up, we never had pets in our house because my brother had asthma. But we had all the pets of the neighborhood come in until he started wheezing, and then we kick him out, okay? But none of my kids or grandkids have asthma. So I've become the proud owner of 3 grand dogs, Bailey, Fitz, and Penny, okay? And at various times, I'm supposed to take care of them, but I'm not a pet guy. I'm not a dog guy, okay? But I've noticed that there are 3 kinds of dog people. The first category are those who like to talk about their dog. Oh, Penny is runs like the wind, okay? Secondly, there are people who talk to their dog. Fitz, come, sit, say, all that kind of stuff, okay? But the most lethal are people who talk for their dog. They are people who tell you what the dog's thinking. Oh, Penny actually loves you, Bob. How do you know what Penny likes? Oh, but look, he's wagging his tail. He talks. They talk for the dog, okay? And I'm one of these guys that I talk a little bit about the dumb dogs when they come and have to stay at my house. And I'll talk to them because I want them to do their thing somewhere else. But I haven't gotten to the point of talking for them, okay? Do you got the analogy? The analogy is this. The same relationship is true regarding people and their relationship with God. There are people who talk about God. They have a lot of fun talking about Jesus. There are some people who actually talk to God and ask him stuff. But you know, the great joy of Palm Sunday is that the King comes near and he's given us the privilege of talking for him to a world around.
Amen.
That's my big lesson for Palm Sunday. Your responses, and then Joe, you'll close us in prayer.
Well, I've been thinking about Palm Sunday. You know, the story is in one way or another in all four of the Gospels. And Matthew and John both made a point to show how Jesus was fulfilling prophecy. You know, and those are the two Jewish Gospels, so to speak. And Jesus seemed to be saying, you guys should be able to recognize what's going on here. It's almost like he was pointing them to the book of Zechariah. You know, you need to take a look at this and see what's really going on, because they weren't seeing through the right lens. They had a misunderstanding of what Jesus was going to accomplish in his first coming. Easy to do. Easy to do. And I think we are in the same danger. I heard a lot of people saying 2020 is the year of vision. And I almost always rebuke that. I say, well, no, 2020 is more likely the year of hindsight. We always seem to miss what's going on. And if we're not paying attention, we have a great opportunity now in front of us with this coronavirus. And if we're not paying attention and paying attention to the word, then we're probably going to miss the opportunity that's in front of us now, too. You know, Jesus was saying, you should recognize what's going on by what I'm doing. And I always say to people, if you want to know what God's going to do, look at what God has already done. He almost never shows up or comes through the way we expect him to. And if we're not paying attention, and if we're too focused on ourselves and not focused on hearing him and speaking to him and hearing him, then we're going to presume to speak for him, and we're going to speak incorrectly.
Yeah, you know, expectation, what you had said there. Because my expectation was, I was looking forward to you coming here, because I started out doing concert ministry, and then I became a worship leader. And I was looking forward to doing worship when you came here. So that expectation is dashed. You know, it's... So I love the message. I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying to us, and we really do have the privilege right now to really be speaking for God. So let's pray. So God, I'm really grateful that we're here. Not at all the way that I had seen it in my own mind, Lord. You do what you do, but here we are in a great opportunity, a time that it's wide open. And so Lord, we look at what was going on with all of those people there, the hardness of the religious leaders and the ruling leaders. And Lord, which one are we? So we would really like for our hearts to be soft. We'd like to be listening, and we'd like to have the opportunity to speak and to share. So open our eyes so that we can see. Thanks for Bob. Thanks for this opportunity. Thanks that we're in the middle of this coronavirus and what it means for us in probably the next 30 to 60 days. Lord, thanks so much for coming on that Palm Sunday road,
Yes.
that Sunday. Thanks so much for going to the cross for us. Thanks for your resurrection from the dead. And then what did the Apostle Paul say? And then appeared to many, and then appeared to us. Appeared to us.
Yes.
And we'd like to see you appear to a lot more
Yes.
in this particular time. So we're grateful, we're thankful in your name. So may the Lord bless you, as we usually say, and may he keep you, and may he make his face shine upon you, and may he give you peace. Amen.
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 Thanks, Bob. We're really, really grateful. Really grateful. But I really
It was a
did
good
think I'd
time.
be on the platform leading worship, and then you'd come up. So things aren't always the way that we think they're going to be. Good.